Right, this is me in my shed. I'm not with Mr. Musk on Mars, and I'm going to try and share my screen. Starting again with, I left the high street. I really enjoyed working there, but I wasn't making any money. So unlike in Bedminster in Bristol, where I wasn't earning a lot of money, but I was working quite comfortably and had plenty of patients. Unfortunately, there weren't many to see in the high street because the dentists I'd taken over from, who'd bought the goodwill, all the patients, or the vast majority, liked them and were prepared to walk an extra mile to see them. And you often find that is that people actually come to you. And back then, yeah, you couldn't really, you couldn't advertise. I thought I'd stick that on because you can have a read of that. So you had yellow pages, and you had a line entry. You had to be very careful what you did, and you had a brass plaque, which is in my shed now. I can see it here, and that was it. You didn't have Facebook or Instagram or anything like that where you can kind of promote yourself individually. You'd have got struck off for that. Oh, let's not go there. So anyway, these are my record cards. So the neat handwriting was from Philippa, a nurse at the time, and the scribble is from me, and there's bits from the hygienist there. So back then, I would say we used to kind of work off a half-hour book in general. So that would be like someone had come in and needed treatment. I'd tend to book them in for like half an hour. Although what you would do is you'd get them in, numb them up, always liked anesthetic, pop them outside, give it a chance to work, and do a couple of checkups. So that's how it kind of run. I mean, you can see there's some crowns that we did. So we did it in half an hour. And you can see that if you look, that the crowns hardly did any PJCs because, quite frankly, they used to keep breaking. I never took enough enamel off, or, because as everyone else did, at one stage that you did what was called a traumatic exposure, is it? When there's no caries there, you just expose and the tooth starts bleeding and you think, uh-oh. I mean, it's a bit odd. Apparently in France, they root fill teeth before they crown them. I mean, I keep thinking, I can't believe that. Anyway, these are my notes, and you can see there that I'd done some, even back then, that's 88. I used to do Glaciano Fisher sealants then. AF amalgam filling. And the hygienist, she had a full 15 minutes, which obviously included writing up her extensive notes. Yeah, also included tidying up her surgery because she worked on her own. And so that's why we have the habit, and you see it written down there, of scale and polish. Right? We know it doesn't work. Right? We know that it would have been far better to spend the quarter of an hour doing nothing than show the patients how to keep their mouths clean. And it's taken forever to change that back. And these are the x-rays that I took back then. And you can see it's a little bit difficult to look at them. Well, it was difficult to look at them with a magnifying glass, but that's what we used. And I really like radiographs in that it shows you where you are. And in the end, we got quite organized. So that's how them quite organized. And when these mounts come out, you thought, fantastic, that's brilliant. How could we do that? You can also see, and there's one there where I think I'm looking for you can see that where I started to do the root filling. And unfortunately, I coned, so you can't see the rubber dam clamp. But anyway, that was far easier. And that's where I was. So with this, I was meant to do this. I'll do this now. Hey Siri, set timer for 15 minutes. There we are. 15 minutes, counting down. Oh, if only I'd had one of them back in the day. If only we had lots of things. At this stage, if only we'd had computers, I could have written far more notes rather than try and cram them onto one little card, because these cards ended up bulging. And so as another story, basically, I went to get some inserts because we'd run out of the practice. This was a few years later. And you had what was called an FT17 DC, where you have to tell the patient or give them an estimate of what was going to be done. So when I went to the office where you could pick up these cards. I said, we're getting low on cards. I think it was a national shortage of cards or whatever. I said, does anyone ever ask for the DC forms? And the chap in the office said, no one. No one ever runs out of DC forms, which either means that no one was treating anyone, or very few people complied with the guidelines they were given from the health service. Just saying, it was back in the day, it was a less scary environment. And yeah, so this is a different thing. And I think I put this in 2001. Oh no, I'd moved then. I'd moved to another practice. But what I was saying, I think, for here was that, I'd seen an apicectomy when I was a student, and yeah, I was about 8 of us crammed around trying to watch a patient, so I saw nothing. And then I had a patient. Well, this guy booked in. Who was he? Oh, I think I know who this guy is. Yeah, so I know who this chap is, and this guy goes, yeah, he caused a lot of hassle. He attacked me. So this is later when I worked here at Broadwalk. It snowed, and I come out and he attacked me with snowballs. I think he was 13 at the time. Anyway, I carried on seeing him. I ended up playing football with him, and yeah, I know why he needed this treatment, which was me removing an apical third that had fractured after it was root filled. It was something weird had gone on. Anyway, so that's for me, that's really extensive notes. So yeah, probably not as extensive as yours. Oh yeah, and you go on YouTube. If you're not sure about something, go on YouTube. And I'm going to do a different video showing YouTube, because there's some rubbish on YouTube, apart from mine. Right. So that way we saw that. And yes, so this is one of the things, is I didn't have it then, but if you have radiographs, show your patients. I mean, it's brilliant. You can, to be frank, most of them said, I haven't got a clue what you're looking at, but at least you could try and explain why you needed to do some treatment. And certainly with the camera, when you show digital photos, and you'll see lots of extremely poor photos that I've taken, because I never thought anyone would look at them, but they were ideal for the patient. It just basically showed them what you were trying to do. And you have to be careful how much you show, because quite frankly, you can show them something, any mark, and say, well, that needs treating. And that's why it's a profession. You have to do the right thing. So yes, so there we are. Look at that. They're fantastic. They're those x-rays there, or radiographs, whatever you want to call them. And yeah, it shows, yeah, it shows I don't know who this is, but clearly it shows a Maryland. Yeah, it shows Maryland for a 3 off a 4. Well, you should never do that, because yeah, that won't work. And this is where I nearly got into trouble. So I think that I put another video on, and that kind of explains it. So you can see these are clearly taken a lot later, but most of the patients I saw for 30 years. And yeah, I think that was just to show the difference. I'm not even sure if I'm on the wrong group of slides now. Yeah, it could be on the wrong group of slides. Right, let me just hold my horses there and just check. Oh no, I'm on the right set of slides. So yes, so this actually, there was a sinus. If you look above the lateral, now this isn't a bridge, and these are crowns that were done. And every now and again, this lady had a sinus that came up above the lateral, and I'm not sure if we'll get as far as showing the x-rays. You can see below roughly what's going on. Oh yeah, and if you look to the bottom right, you can see something that I did that was where I made a temporary bridge, but clearly that's a lot later. But this is what I was going to discuss on, now, these are off my YouTube channel. So have a look at them. Tomorrow I'm going to a dental show in London. So what's the date? Yeah, so it'll be the 6th of October. I'm going to a dental show in London. And that's what I'm trying to do, is to get a dental health service going, because quite frankly, we should promote prevention. And I was going to talk about a patient that I saw who I made a Maryland for, and it had I was re-cementing it. And about the 3rd time I come in to re-cement the Maryland, I said, look, this isn't going to work. But I think if I cut one of the wings off, it'll last longer. She was 17, and she wasn't happy. I'd already been to the GTC once, and I was only, I think, 25 when I started here. Yeah, so I just invested a lot of money in buying here. And anyway, and her mum was there as well. So she's 17, her mum's there. She wasn't happy. She was crying. She was telling her mum that she was going to sue me and all this kind of stuff if I took it off and broke it, even though it kept falling off, leaving a gap there. Anyway, so I cut off the wing, and yeah, it lasted at least 30 years. So the bottom right, so this is interesting. So this might play. So you can see, oh, in the middle, at the top, I've done a few talks to cows. Cattle are really interested, and they're interested in my blogs. They're interested in oral cancer. They're interested in the BPE. If only could get people interested. So anyway, so this guy, I remember distinctly, because back in the day, he used to come in wearing makeup, which in Knowle West was quite an achievement. It's no wonder he got his tooth knocked out. And he played for like a punk band, the Slaves, I think they were called. And, you know, so he's a great guy. I hadn't seen him for 30 years. So I'm not sure if this will play. Oh, here we go.
To an old patient. We're all old now. On the Downs, and anyway, this is quite an interesting story. Hello, my name's Clive. I was a patient of this man 30 years ago. He did a bridge for me, which he told me would only last 10 years. It lasted 30 years. I've only just had it removed because it needed removing, and I've decided to go for implants, which are going to cost me £6,500. But I was offered to have a tooth stuck on either side, which I decided not to do. But if you look at the top of my mouth here, that one is stuck to the other side, which this gentleman did for me there, and that's also been there for 30 years. It's caused me no problems whatsoever. So I recommend it. To take back control of your health, download.
Right, so, you know, that was Clive. And yeah, that was a surprise to meet him there. And so the other thing was, where I worked, Broadwalk, when I went there, the people at which was a mainly private practice, said I was off to the amalgam factory. Because, yeah, we did a lot of amalgams, we did a lot of treatment. And, you know, you needed to do a lot of treatment. And sometimes the treatment didn't last that long. So the reason I'm showing this is, at that time, a occlusing come out, which is a white filling. Now, this must be one that I did, I don't know who on, but it was over 15 years old. But it represents what I've kind of done is, the problem with white fillings is, if you've got an amalgam filling there already, you try and make the white filling smaller than the amalgam filling. You know, it's impossible. So there's a bit of staining here. You know, you should never show things under magnification, but I did do them. But what happened was one of the dentists had a lot of amalgam fillings, as have I. And he wanted them replaced with white fillings that had just come out. So one of the other partners, and there were 4 partners at that time, one of the other partners had replaced all his amalgam fillings with occlusing. And the dentist kept complaining, well, it's a bit sensitive here, it's a bit sensitive, which of course we all know about now, this shrinkage and whatever. And we had some quite good curing lights at the time. Can't remember, but they were big, but they were, you know, they're quite impressive, these curing lights. And the chap that did them, he was very good, but he was very quick. Right, so he made a lot of money. He was very quick. And even on his partner, he's very quick. So anyway, he went on holiday. So the dentist with the white fillings said to me, Tony, can you replace the white fillings with amalgam? You know, and it's always great treatment of the dentist because, you know, you're always aware that their eyes are following you everywhere, making sure you're doing this and that. Anyway, when I removed the white filling, I always remember this, they were mushy underneath. They weren't dual cure, they were single cure, and they just hadn't cured. And so I was always a bit reluctant to do composites because, one, you end up with a lot less tooth tissue, and 2, back then you used to get a lot of sensitivity. I mean, the material's a lot better now, and they take a lot longer. They take a lot longer to do. So, you know, they brought out, I'm trying to remember what it's called now, an amalgam. So it was encapsulated. When I started, it wasn't. I always remember the nurse spilling the mercury. So that's probably why I'm still slightly mad. But yeah, they brought a high copper amalgam. I can't remember the name of it, but I thought, no, this is just fantastic. It was so hard. It was the dogs. Anyway, oh yeah, and the bit of ultrasonic is when I did replace an amalgam, and often it was more likely it's because they had secondary caries. When removing it, I'd remove it ultimately, as I did with most things, with an ultrasonic at the end. And so that's why some of my composites don't have a little bit of staining in them, because I'm just trying to hang on to the tooth. And so no, that's just a composite sealant. So yeah, the best thing is nothing at all. But these work quite well and they wear down. And yeah, so I also did glass anima, and that's been there for 13 years. So these aren't necessarily, I'm wondering where these have come from. So I'll talk about these again. However, right, this is relevant to that time because yeah, clearly that's me looking for wind. And yeah, clearly it's me because my spelling, and this is terrible. So sometimes my thumb slips on the keyboard. You can draw your own conclusions. But I had a patient for 30 years, and this particular patient was lovely, and I saw all the family. And it's on the other hand, it was really sad because she was a grinder. So I've been to the previous place, and so I made her a Tanner appliance. And when I finished work, she still had her teeth. Sadly, she didn't have her two boys, and that's tragic. So unfortunately, one, again, he was a lovely guy. He got some motor neuron disease, and I ended up treating him in a wheelchair. And that's right, I did a Maryland for him. He lost a central, and he'd fallen over because it's just tragic. And his brother, unfortunately, he committed suicide. And so no wonder this patient was grinding her teeth, and that was before. And I was always loath to do treatment on her because she was often in pain here, there, and everywhere. But it was she really was a grinder, and she had a lot to grind her teeth about. And just as an aside, I worked here because the dentist about 4 years previously, whose book it was, had committed suicide. And the dentist that took over from him, I knew socially. I knew all these guys socially before I went to work with them. About 15 years later, a rep came to see us and was telling us and joking about a dentist who started to cry in the middle of treatment. And so he's relating this story and he was joking about it. And it's the guy I bought the practice of, who I knew extremely well. And so mental health is an issue. And this is why I've done this, is we're trying to make things easier for ourselves. But if you're listening to this now and you're working, I do think you're under a lot more stress than we were from the wrong sources. And people my age should be trying to help you make it easier. We've gone too far. Distraction. Anyway, this patient, she said, Mr. Smith, she said. Now, everyone called me Mr. Smith. A lot called me Tony in the end, but Mr. Smith will do. Not Dr. Smith, that's a different thing. She said, I'm really pleased with your treatment. She says, but your camper van, you come to work in a camper van. All the other dentists come to work in Porsches. Why do it's a bad show. It makes you look like you're not doing decent work. And you think, well, that's a different perception. I thought that maybe she thought that I was economic. I don't know, but yeah. And yeah, no, I keep in touch with her. So this, I think I just took this in because, the idea behind these is hopefully you'll pick something up. So I was a trainer in the end for 20 years because I had such a crap start. And this is one of the bits I took away, is that to do anything, you need to enjoy what you do and you have to challenge yourself. And there's my, right. So I'm going to stop after the next slide and then I'll do another one. But yeah, it says it there, is where you want to be is in that flow. And this makes a lot of sense. So as with all these things, if you want to read it, just pause it. But this is clearly from some presentation I gave to some unfortunates, but I was never sure how to spell it. I'm pretty sure that's spelled eudaimonia. Yeah. get into your flow. I think it happened occasionally. No, it did happen. I used to, at times I used to really like work. Oh yeah, right. So just to finish, this is very recent because I was taught about the SPEC technique, and only recently, when I say recently, in my practicing time, come across silver diamine fluoride, and actually acquired some to try, but then I'd had enough, as you'll probably hear me moan about. But when we had COVID, the chief dental officer said we should use the SPEC technique, and that's because she's probably trained the same time as me, and it was never implemented because if you used it and a patient went and saw someone else in pain, they'd say, well, you haven't done it, you haven't done a root filling. It'd be interesting to see how, I think this is the first stage you should do them for an awful lot. I see nothing wrong with this SPEC technique. They use it in Australia, but you can't do it in the UK because our teeth are different, aren't they? Silver diamine fluoride. There's a woman, McLean. So just type in children's dentistry. I think it's Jeanette McLean. She's fantastic. For all your kids stuff, look at her stuff. And this was, I just added this. Yeah, so you can read that, but it was talking about minimal invasive dentistry and art. I mean, we all did art. We just didn't know it was called art. And this, yeah, after COVID, right? During COVID, we used to, you told AAA. And here in Broadwalk, on call started. We had a mobile phone that you carried around in a suitcase. It was so big. And then we did on call. Oh yeah, I've written a note at the bottom, right? Well, after COVID, so I think we spent 30 billion on track and trace, but no one, and there is no funding to check which of those patients come back to have their root filling, to have their extraction, to have the treatment, because that would be a good study to find out, well, did they come back? Because in my experience, we had patients that you tend to see on a Saturday, and I did Saturday mornings and I did the on-call. And Saturday mornings had more people not turn up than during the week. That was one thing. I used to find it useful to build up my stress levels ready for a game of football on the Saturday afternoon because I wasn't particularly violent playing football. I do think you need a bit of aggression. And yeah, so you'd also got people who just come in and say, well, I came in, last year on the Saturday, I called you out or whatever, and the dentist gave me some antibiotics. Can't I have them now? So the last thing they wanted was treatment. And you'd have a lot of this going on. Never been any real significant studies around what's best in the long term for the patient. And I've got lots of x-rays showing this, showing my lousy root fillings that work fantastic. People that have refused treatment and still seem to be alive. There are other sides to it. And of course there are, but what would you want? I'm about to have a crown. And the guy said, do you want to have me to do a periapical before you have it done? Well, my teeth are falling apart. So I thought, Christ, no. I'd rather have the root filling through the crown. And I used to do them, when they needed them, I do them a lot. You don't need to replace the crown. I even used to, if someone snapped off an anterior crown, that was the one difficult thing you have. But, generally in half an hour, you can get them back on. You do the root filling, fit a post, stick them on. And I was no great shakes, but, you can do that. And there was a bit, oh yeah, on call skiing. Well, we got paid for item of service. This is the one thing where nearly everyone I knew committed what you would say is fraud, in that, you'd open the surgery quite a few times. And so a weekend on call, you'd earn more from opening the surgery. And often it would pay for a skiing holiday. Now, I'm not saying, but I had a friend that did that. This is a different thing, and this is where things go wrong. I also had a friend, and I asked him how he had a fantastic car. He had his house in Spain, as well as house in UK. I said, how do you do it? And he said, you got to tick the boxes, Tony. Tick the boxes. Anyway, so years later, I met him and I said, or rather, I heard from a different mutual friend that he got into a bit of trouble because of what copies is box ticking. And what it was every morning he had a dental emergency, and every afternoon he had a dental emergency for 2 years. So the GDC found out about this, from the scrutiny, and they said, we notice, Mr. Jones, or Mr. Smith, Mr. Roberts, anyway, we noticed that you seem to be claiming quite a lot of these, a lot more than a normal. Please stop. So that was it. That was it. He's just stopped claiming. God knows how many to carry on claiming. Yeah, GDC. Give me a gun. Don't quote me on that. Right, that's it. I'll do another one later. Because there's something happened. Was it Tuesday? I went on a course, and some of the stuff we have to put up with is pants.